Synovial joints have 5 characteristics, and if I change the order is not as important as what the joints are, and I've tried to freehand draw this, but the key here is that the bones are held to have hyaline cartilage on the end, which, remember from the bone growth lecture, we know is articular cartilage or hyaline cartilage. It's on the end. There's a gap or a space, which is my number 5. We actually have a joint cavity between the bones. There's actual space here. The bones are held together with the fibrous joint capsule. Now, ligaments would be outside this. Ligaments are extra. Not every synovial joint has ligaments, but we all have a joint capsule, which is dense, irregular connective tissue. And that's going to be lined with the synovial membrane facing inside, which I have my number 3, which I drew with the dotted orange lines. The synovial membrane is a membrane that lines this capsule to make the synovial fluid, which I've made this yellow color in there, and it fills the joint cavity. If you've ever cracked your knuckles or had your elbows go pop or your shoulders pop, that is movement of the synovial fluid within the joint cavity, and it does not cause arthritis. We have several different types of synovial joints, subtypes. We have synovial planar joints, which is 2 flat things next to each other. I have a lot of different examples. I gave 2 here. The movement is described as gliding or sliding. We have the acromioclavicular joint here between the clavicle and the acromion of the scapula. And we have the sacroiliac joint. There are many. This is actually one of the largest group of joints. We have a lot of different planar joints. There's a more complete list in the joint photo document. It is the most common, and I've given a whole long list here of everything from the intercarpal to the sacroiliac, the proximal tibiofibular, many different examples. A synovial hinge joint only does the movements of flexion and extension. So sometimes it will be described as uniaxial. But the key here is we only do flexion extension. The elbow, which is the one photographed here, and the interphalangeal joints, meaning the joints between your fingers. The ankle is technically a modified hinge. The knee is not a hinge joint. We'll see the knee later. Here's the other joints where you've got all these interphalangeal joints are hinge joints. I pointed out the ankle is a modified hinge. Synovial pivot joints allow for rotation. We've already looked at the atlantoaxial joint, and we've looked at pronation, supination, so the other ones are the proximal and distal radio-ulnar joints. Condyle joints are kind of the drawing I did. The condyles are your knuckles. The word condyle actually means knuckle. They can do flexion and extension. We can do ab and adduction, which allows us to do circumduction. The wrist joint is a condyle joint, and so is C1 to the skull. Some books will classify the sternoclavicular as a weak condyle instead of a planar joint, but most books call it a planar joint. The synovial saddle joint, there's only one you have to know. It's at the base of your thumb. It is the first carpometacarpal joint. It is what allows for the opposable thumb. So if you take your thumb and touch your little finger, that is actually an extreme adduction of your thumb. It will also do flexion, extension, ab and adduction, but this is what allows for the opposable thumb. There is one other saddle joint in the body, but we are not going to learn about it. Bicondylar, here's where the knee is. There are only 2 bicondylar joints in the body. One is the knee, well, okay, two knees, and the jaw. The temporomandibular joint is a bicondylar joint. We get flexion and extension with medial and lateral rotation. Your knee actually has to be able to rotate as it flexes, or you lose range of motion. This photograph includes the meniscus and the ligaments, but there are other pictures without. The last type of synovial joint is the ball and socket joint. Sometimes some people say ball in socket. We have the highest degree of movement because we have flexion, extension, ab and adduction, medial and lateral rotation. Both the whole shoulder and the hip are the only 2 ball and socket joints. So that is the lecture on joints.